In this next movie, we're going to take a look at where to find video scopes and what they mean and how to read them. Let's go ahead and step into the video scopes project file. Now, exactly what are scopes used for? Well, if you eyeball a scene, it may look properly balanced, but your eye can be fooled. And if your monitor is not properly calibrated, what could look really good on your screen might not look really good on your customer's screen. So you can use video scopes, which provide a graphical representation of your video, to see if they're within broadcast specifications or if there's a tonality problem or a color hue problem. To find your video scope, go into the upper right-hand corner of your viewer window, click on the drop-down menu, and select Open Scopes. For now, since we're not going to use the inspector when we're adjusting our levels, I'm going to close it so you can see our scopes and our images a little bit larger. So let's take a quick look at the three primary scopes that you can work with. If you go under the Settings drop-down, there's three different types of scopes: a histogram, a vector scope, and a waveform. You'll actually probably use the waveform the most, so let's take a look at that one first. If I place my skimmer over any image, you'll notice that the scope updates. The waveform scope is simply looking at the luminance values or the brightness values of your image. And ideally, these values should fall between 0 and 100. Now, this image is a little bit bright. The green is actually blowing out over 100, and this is something you would fix with the color correctors. We can also see from this scope that there's a lot of green in the image, which is represented by the chroma key background. A minimal amount of blue from her shirt, as well as a little bit of pink, which is her skin tone. As we skim over these other shots, you can see not only the luminance values in this scope, and in this case, we're pretty close between 0 and 100, but you can also see there's a lot more yellow in the image. Finally, as we go over to the third image, I can see that the door is quite blown out, way over 100, which is probably something I'm going to need to fix with my broadcast safe effect. Now let's take a look at these same images using one of our other scopes. The vector scope deals exclusively with color. It tells me the general hue of the image. Is it more green? Is it more red? Is it more blue? If we skim over our chroma key shot, you can see there's a lot of green in this image. You also see the preponderance of blue in her shirt. What's most important about this scope are the square targets with the letters next to them. The letters represent colors: R for red, B for blue, and G for green. Those are the primary colors that you're working with. Your secondary colors are magenta, cyan, and yellow. Now, what's really critical about this scope is that you never want to have any of the traces, those are the colored lines, exceed the limits of the square, because that would mean that part of your image is oversaturated and wouldn't look good on television. Let's quickly skim over our other two shots to see how they look in the vector scope. You'll notice again that we pretty much have a preponderance of yellow and white in this shot, and that's why the vector scope is pointing in this direction. And finally, we have a lot more blown out images, but you can see the teal in the girl's shirt as well as the blown out background of the door. The last scope we're going to look at is the histogram. And the histogram gives you a general feel of your contrast of a shot, which is the ratio between the darkest area to the lightest area. If you have a nicely balanced shot with good contrast, your histogram should look like a nice mountain range. If we look at this shot on our histogram, we see a large spike on the right side, which represents the blown out part of the image of the doorway. And finally, we'll skim over to our chroma key shot, and again, you can see how the colors are represented in the histogram. We'll be using these scopes in the following movies as we color correct our images. Now, I do want to do one correction in this movie just so you can see how the scopes are affected. We're going to go to the very last clip, the one with the blown out door, and I'm going to switch over to our waveform because this is quite blown out. You see everything is way over 100. And we're going to put a simple filter from our effects browser to fix this shot. Now, the effect is that you'll lose a lot of the detail in the image, and if you're going to be broadcasting this image, it's outside of something called broadcast safe. So not only could you be fined by the FCC, but the video will actually bleed over into the audio and you could hear buzzing. Now, the broadcast safe filter is located in our effects browser. Select your effects browser and simply type in safe, and you'll see your broadcast safe filter. Grab the filter and drag it and drop it onto the third clip. I want you to notice what happens in both the video scope and also to the image. What you'll see is now the scope peaks at only 100, and you'll notice a little more detail in the skin tone of the dancer in the foreground. Now, in an ideal world, you'd actually use the color correction tools to be very selective about repairing your image. But if you're running and gunning and you need to do a quick fix, the Broadcast Safe filter is a good solution.